things he's done. He has found he knows in the end, as this election gets closer, whether it happens in the primary season or not, I don't know, but it will certainly happen in the general election when he's the nominee, that they will be asking the different candidates, let's see how your budget works out. And so he's been responsible in each of the things that he has suggested to make certain. Now, there are things like energy policy, which actually self-fund because of when you reduce the carbon, when you reduce how much carbon people can emit, and either by a carbon tax or an auction, it doesn't really matter, it has basically the same effect. People will pay for the right to emit carbons, and you can pay for a lot of your activities, including the support of development of alternative energy, and not just the research, but the actual bricks and mortar to get it done. Support Detroit in making the most fuel-efficient cars in the world here, in this country, with unionized labor. So there are a lot of things that you can... No Dingle? Well, John Dingle's going to have to I have to say, GM stood aside when UAW stood up last week. And I was proud. I walked one of those picket lines with the UAW in Grand Rapids and was proud to do it. So GM is not in the command position they used to be. Yes, sir.
Thank you for coming and visiting.
Glad to be back in Reno.
The question that I have is recently the campaign has decided to move federal funding.
Yes.
The limitations of that, do they stay with the entire campaign?
No, that's for the primaries.
Just the primaries?
Yes, sir. And I've heard some public financing of campaigns. John is determined, which is consistent with this campaign. He's doing the same thing he did in 2004, which is to abide by the federal both spending and raising limitations that are set by federal law. He thinks that's the position most consistent with all of his policies, and he has said that this time he's going to do the same thing. It affects how much money you can spend in each state with primaries, but we know those numbers to be adequate to get the message out. And frankly, we're talking in this election about fairly obscene amounts of money being spent on the election. So if he's got enough to get the message out, and he's the messenger people like, we think that's probably enough. The other thing, I got a question the other day where people misunderstood you can still donate online. Somebody had the idea that you couldn't donate online at all if that were the case. It's not the case. And this is for the primary. In the general election, John will try to get an agreement from the Republican candidate to abide by federal, and if they do not, then he will not. But if he does, if they do, and I hope that they would, we will abide again by the federal limitations. I'll get one in the back. Yes, ma'am. In the purple t-shirt.
I come from a small town in Nevada, and I know that many of them depend on mining as their source of economy. But I know many of them refused to vote Democrat back in 2004 because they were afraid that their environmental policy would shut down the mines and have to ship their families off to other countries. What would John's stance be on mining in regard to the environment and the economy?
You know, I don't want to act naive, but what do they mine near your town? Coal. Coal. They said coal, because the coal was. John is not for building any more coal-fired power plants.
We're building two up.
Well, John says, you know, if we could find a way to sequester the emissions from the coal power plants, that'd be fine. But we're not even close to that kind of technology at the present time. It should be irresponsible to be doing it. And John, you know, he may have switched his position, but Senator Obama was in favor of liquefied coal. You know, we need to be moving away from carbon-based fuels instead of increasing the prices. I'll be as honest as I can. I don't know anything in John's policy that should be a problem for miners gold miners in your part of the state. But I want to make certain that I'm completely candid with you. I want to make certain that if you will make certain that you get your name to one of the people who are here at this. There's one right there, Adams, right near you. If you can get him your name, we will get you a complete answer on that, because I don't like to plead white, but So I'm telling you, I don't know of anything that would prevent it, but that doesn't mean there isn't something. So, and you deserve to know, and they deserve to know. If you're going to convince them, if you're going to be an emissary for the campaign out there convincing them, you'll need to have the actual facts about it. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you mentioned that many jobs are being outsourced to various countries. How does John propose to get these jobs back in the States?
Well, there's some jobs, we're not going to get back. Our part of the country, John's father used to, when he would go around to different mills to help them be more productive, he used to go to a lot of sock mills, and he'd always bring us, boxes and boxes of socks. We have so many socks now, we'll never need to buy a pair. But we're not going to make socks in this country anymore. The truth is, that's the truth. That they have Sock City in China. 1 million people live in Sock City. They make nothing but socks. For economies of scale, nobody in the world is ever going to be able to compete with that. But the truth of the matter is there are a couple of ways that we can get jobs back in this country. One is by investment in some of this money that I talked about when we do the auction for people to emit carbons under a cap that John would set. That's going to create a fund that will allow us to develop the new industries that will be the industries of the future. That's going to be alternative energies. It will be building wind turbines, biomass, what do they call it? Factories? They're not called factories though. Biomass facilities, that's a good word that covers it all, isn't it? All kinds of photovoltaic cells, they need to be produced someplace. And we're in a transition period where not just us, but the whole world is going to require these goods. And we can, if we are a leader, if the government helps us be a leader on this, we'll be creating whole new legions of jobs in these areas. The other thing that our environmental policy is going to do is, we talked about the fact that John takes the carbon emissions we have today, lowers it every year until we are at 20% of where we are today by 2050. And if you want to emit carbon in that 20%, you have to, there's a fee associated with it, a tax, or you buy it at auction, and that money is used for different purposes. Well, that money, if you're going to emit carbons, adds to the cost of your goods, realistically. And so if you're going to transport your goods for long distances, then it's going to add to the cost of those goods. So these companies are making a completely economic situation, decision. That it's cheaper for them to build it in Mexico, or cheaper for them to build it in China. But maybe it won't be. Maybe it won't be if we have trade policies that actually say that they have to earn a decent living in those states, in those places. They have to have environmental policies and protections, that they have to have working conditions that are safe. If our trade policies indicate that goods won't be coming into this country from countries that don't have those conditions for employment, and so their costs will go up somewhat there. Maybe they'll decide it's cheaper to build them here, and maybe they'll decide again that it's cheaper always to build a product closer to where your consumer is, because at the cost of the cost of transportation, the cost of that carbon emission is also part of their costs in doing business. So it's odd to think that both a trade policy and an environmental policy together have the capacity to bring those jobs home. I have to tell you, at one point I despaired of any possibility that this was going to happen, but I don't anymore. I actually think that this is what's going to happen. Some of it can happen right away by the government making investment in jobs, by the government insisting on fair trade agreements, but some of it's going to happen over time.